Every spring we get farmers who complain about how their pre-emerge herbicides work. So today we're going to talk just a little bit about how you can make your pre-emerge herbicides work better regardless of the environmental conditions.
Well, obviously last year, in our area anyway, we had some good spring moisture and the pre's worked great. I've never talked to so many guys that said, oh man, that was the best thing I ever did. In fact, there were some guys that said, I didn't even have to spray post-emerge, that pre worked so good. Don't get your expectations that high. When we're using a pre-emerge herbicide, it's not to get 100% control of weeds for the entire year. What we're really trying to do is stop that early weed pressure that really robs a lot of yield, and that sets us up for better yields later on.
What we're talking about with these pre-emerge herbicides is either shoot inhibitors or root inhibitors. So where is the shoot on the weed? Well, in a lot of cases, we're talking about little grass plants, or we're talking about small-seeded broadleaves, and they're going to germinate in that top inch of soil, sometimes even the top half inch. So we want to keep our pre-emerge herbicides relatively shallow if they are shoot inhibitors. And the shoot inhibitors are mainly the corn herbicides that you might think of, like Harness, Surpass, Outlook, Dual. Many of those types of products are shoot inhibitors. On the other hand, many of the soybean products, like the yellows, the DNAs, the Treflans, Sonolans, Prowls, those products are root inhibitors. The root obviously is going to come out just a little bit lower than what the shoot is. So if you've got shoot inhibitors that you're dealing with, you've got to keep those shallow. The root inhibitors can be a little bit deeper, but even so, we want to kill the plant when it's small. Well, where is that root going to be? It's going to start at a half an inch or an inch, and it's going to go down a little bit. So regardless of the product that you're using for a pre-emerge herbicide, we just don't want to bury it. We want to for sure keep it in the top couple inches of soil. That's one of the biggest keys.
Okay, well, the easy alternative is you say, well, I'll just leave it on top of the ground. Yeah, that can be done, but it takes some moisture to get that down into the soil. So if we're in a no-till situation, for example, it's going to take some moisture to get through the residue and wash off the product off the residue and then get it into the soil and then get it into the wheat.
Yeah, but here's the whole problem, Darren. All these big companies will say, well, with just a half an inch of moisture, you can activate our product. Well, you can activate it, but you're not going to get it all the way down and activate it if your soil's dry to start with.
Well, the other thing is when do you need to put it on? Well, you can put it on after you plant. You are really relying on catching a timely rain to get it to work after you plant. So we try to get our pre's on at least a couple of weeks ahead of when we're going to plant, so we have a window where we can catch some rain.
What you can do is just move up your planting date by a couple of weeks and then spray your herbicide right after. So for example, on our farm, the first date I can plant my corn is April 10th according to crop insurance. So what I will do is I'll go out and plant some then, and I'll spray right after I plant. Well, in our area, May 1st, May 5th, somewhere in that range is usually when a lot of those early season weeds start. So no big deal if I can plant April 10th. But here's the thing, if I'm planting May 1st and now I'm gonna spray right after I plant, now I have a lot of risk because I've got to have a rain almost instantly. Otherwise, those weeds are going to germinate and they're going to get big. And once they get any size to them at all, there's no way that you have the reach back ability with any pre-emerge herbicide to kill those weeds.
You've got to use a good rate to those pre's if you're going to count on much residual. And this is one of the things that, as soon as we had Roundup Ready crops and Liberty Link crops, a lot of guys said, I've got such a good post-emerge option. I don't need to spend all that money on my pre-emerge option. And it was hard to argue with that when corn was $2 or less. Yeah, maybe we could cut that $20 treatment out or at least cut it back to a half rate or something like that because, wow, we're only getting $2 for the corn. But those days are done. We're getting good prices for our corn, good prices for our soybeans. We need to use full rates of pre's for a couple of reasons. One, economically it makes sense. We're going to get a good return on investment. We're going to get higher yields if we can lengthen that control out and stop weeds before they're even out of the ground. But two, we've got a lot of resistant weeds that we're fighting. And if we can stop those weeds so we don't have to use harsh post-emerge treatments, that's a good thing too.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about these different pre's and where to place them and everything. We've also discussed no-till a little bit, but what we want you to keep in mind is some products fit in no-till and other products, they just plain don't. So for example, Treflan, Sonolan, Eradicate, all those products have to be literally instantly incorporated. If you don't have them incorporated within a minute or two, you are already starting to lose them. And I know the label will probably tell you 24 hours you have to incorporate them. Look, You can incorporate 24 hours later. All we're telling you is a bunch of your herbicides already missing. So why do that? Switch from Treflan or Sonalan over to Prowl. Prowl is the no-till product. It's basically the no-till version of Treflan and Sonalan. And instead of Eradicane, you can certainly use something else. Dual, Harness, Surpass, Outlook, one of those types of products. So the key thing is just making sure you know how long can my product sit out there before I have to either have rain or incorporation on it. Okay, one last thing that I wanted to address is just basically starting clean. Yes, if you're doing tillage, you've started clean. You've wiped out all the weeds that are there today. If you're in no-till, make sure you are controlling everything that is there. That means you might have to throw in some Banville. You might have to use Verdict instead of straight Outlook. Do something that gives you burn down ability or burn down capacity when you have some weeds that are already up. And when we talk about tillage and trying to eliminate weeds, some guys get worried that, oh, my weeds are a little big, I better till just a little deeper to make sure I completely take them out. Well, again, the problem with that is we don't want to bury the herbicide. We want to keep it real shallow. What I usually like seeing guys do is go out with a field cultivator at 7 or 8 miles an hour. And a lot of guys will say, whoa, I can't field cultivate at 7 or 8 miles an hour. Well, you know what? If you can't, that means you're probably going too deep. So we want you going shallow. One of the keys for us on our farm was the wheel tracks. What we'll do is we'll actually have extensions behind where the wheel tracks are so we can lower our shanks down just a little bit, lower our sweeps down a little bit. That really helps. Then you don't have to run the whole machine deep. So those are kind of our general tips when we're talking about making the pre's work better. You absolutely can do it on your farm. Just make sure you're using the right product. Don't get it too deep. Use a good strong rate. And again, start clean.
Well, pre's will work very well at controlling most weeds, but will they stop our weed of the week? Can you identify this week's weed?